At first, he looks like a man who has fallen asleep. It is early on the morning of December 1st, 1948. The sun is beginning to rise over Somerton Beach, just outside of Adelaide, Australia. Against the concrete seawall, a well-dressed man sits with his head tilted back and his feet crossed neatly at the ankles. A local resident named John Lyons discovers the motionless figure and alerts police. The stranger does not answer or move. A half-smoked cigarette rests against his coat. The man is dead. There is no wallet, no identification, nothing in his pockets that explains who he is or why he came to this beach. Most of the labels have been cut from his clothing, leaving police with a body dressed for the city and no name to attach to it. For more than 70 years, he will be known only by the place where he was found, the Somerton Man. When science finally gives him a name, the deepest questions will remain in the cold sand beneath that seawall. Witnesses had seen a man in the same place the evening before. One couple watched him raise an arm and let it fall. Others assumed he was drunk or sleeping. Nobody approached him. By morning, the quiet figure had become a crime scene. Police found a rail ticket, a bus ticket, chewing gum, matches, cigarettes, and a small aluminum comb. There was no note and no obvious injury. He wore a shirt and tie, polished shoes, a knitted pullover, and a fine double-breasted coat. The body offered details but no identity. He was about 40 years old, broad-shouldered and physically fit, with unusually developed calf muscles and feet investigators compared to those of a dancer. Then came the autopsy. His stomach was deeply congested. Blood was mixed with the food inside it. His liver and kidneys were engorged, and his spleen was dramatically enlarged. Yet toxicology revealed no foreign substance that the laboratories of 1948 could identify. Several medical witnesses believed the death was unlikely to have been natural, poisoning, possibly by a cardiac glycoside that a 1948 test might miss, became the leading suspicion. But suspicion is not proof. The coroner could not identify a poison or determine how it might have been administered. His official cause of death remained unknown. 6 weeks later, the investigation moved from the beach to the Adelaide railway station. On January 14, 1949, police located a brown suitcase that had been checked into the station cloakroom on November 30th, the day before the body was discovered. Inside were clothing, shaving equipment, tools, and stationery. Once again, most identifying labels had been removed, but a few markings survived. A tie bore the name T. King. A laundry bag read King. A singlet carried the name King without the final letter. Police found no missing T. King who matched the body. The markings appeared to be a false trail or evidence that the clothes had once belonged to someone else. One object tied the suitcase to the dead man much more securely. Inside was a card of unusual orange barber thread. The same type of thread had been used to repair the pockets of the trouser worn by the body on the beach. The suitcase almost certainly belonged to him. It contained a traveler's possessions, but no letter, photograph, or document revealing where he had come from. It was a life reduced to clothing and tools, everything except a name. Months after the body was found, detectives searched the dead man's trousers again. Inside a tiny fob pocket, they discovered a tightly rolled scrap of paper. Printed on it were 2 Persian words: Tamám Shud. Finished. End it. The phrase concluded certain editions of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, poems about fate, mortality, and the brevity of life. Police published an image of the scrap and appealed for the book from which it had been torn. A man later produced a copy of the Rubaiyat. Police protected him under the name Ronald Francis. The book had reportedly been found in an open car near Glenelg, although accounts differ on exactly when and where inside the car. Microscopic examination linked its torn page to the scrap in the dead man's pocket. Under ultraviolet light, investigators found faint writing inside the back cover. There was a telephone number, and above it, 5 short lines of capital letters, one line crossed out, as though the writer had made a mistake and begun again. They have long been called a code, but the sequence is too short for any solution to be proven. It may be a cipher, The initials of Ward's or a private notation understood only by its writer. The letters have never produced a reliable answer. The telephone number produced a woman. The number belonged to Jessica Harkness, later known as Jessica Thomson, a nurse who lived on Mosley Street in Glenelg, only a short walk from the place where the body had been found. Police questioned her. She said she did not know the dead man and could not explain why her unlisted number appeared inside the book. Investigators showed her the plaster cast of the man's head and shoulders. Years later, its maker, Paul Lawson, recalled that Jessica seemed stunned, looked away, and appeared deeply uncomfortable. But memory changes over time, and Jessica never publicly admitted recognizing him. She did reveal one connection to the Rubaiyat. In 1945, she had given a copy to an Army lieutenant named Alf Boxall before he was posted overseas. For a moment, police believed the dead man might be Boxall. Then detectives found him alive in Sydney. Boxall still possessed the copy Jessica had given him. Its final page was intact. The explanation collapsed. Why was Jessica's number in the dead man's book? Why had the book been found in the same part of Glenelg? And why did a face appear to disturb her? Jessica asked police to keep her name from the newspaper. Her connection survived in files, pseudonyms, and later family stories. The silence around her became part of the mystery. By then, the Cold War had begun to reshape the world. South Australia was connected to the secret Anglo-Australian weapon and rockets program at Woomera. Against that background, removed labels, a possible undetectable poison, unexplained letters, and a silent witness began to resemble an intelligence operation. Perhaps he was a courier. Perhaps the letters were a one-time code. Perhaps Jessica was a contact, a handler or a witness too frightened to tell police what she knew. The theory was irresistible. It was also unsupported by direct evidence. No intelligence file named him as an agent. No government has claimed him, and no one has proved the letters are encrypted. The spy story grew because the blank spaces could hold almost anything. The unknown man was buried at West Terrace Cemetery in June 1949. His headstone carried no real name, only the words, "Here lies the unknown man," found at Somerton Beach. A plaster cast preserved his face, and strands of hair trapped in the hardened material. Those hairs would eventually do what fingerprints, dental records, and decades of police appeals could not. In October 2019, the South Australian government approved an exhumation. The remains were lifted from the grave in May 2021 so that modern forensic testing could begin. Meanwhile, University of Adelaide professor Derek Abbott and forensic genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick pursued a separate path using hair recovered from the plaster cast. From degraded fragments, they built a genetic profile, found distant relatives, and constructed family trees leading towards men who had disappeared by 1948. In July 2022, Abbott and Fitzpatrick announced a name: Carl, often called Charles, Webb. Born in Footscray, Victoria in 1905, Webb was an electrical fitter and instrument maker. He married Dorothy Robertson in 1941, then vanished from public records after their marriage failed. The identification used genetic matches on both sides of Webb's family and is widely regarded as persuasive. At the time of the announcement, South Australian police said the independent results had not been formally verified and that the man's identity would ultimately be determined by the coroner. For the first time, the face on the plaster cast belonged to a documented life. Nothing in the records that emerged identified Webb as an international assassin. He was a Melbourne tradesman who enjoyed poetry and horse racing. His relatives were connected to the Keane family, offering a plausible but unproven explanation for the name in the suitcase. Divorce records also revealed a darker private history. In statements made during those proceedings, Dorothy described Webb as solitary, moody, and sometimes violent. She said he wrote poems about death. She also alleged that he attempted suicide with ether in 1946 and had resented her for saving him. These were Dorothy's allegations after the separation. They do not prove how Webb died, but they place the mystery in a more human frame. The man on the beach may have not been a spy, but a troubled, estranged man whose final journey passed almost unnoticed. That possibility is less cinematic than espionage. It may also be closer to the truth. But even Carl Webb's life does not explain the final day. We have a name, but a name is not a story. No confirmed record places Carl Webb in Adelaide on November 30th, 1948. We do not know where he stayed, whom he met, or why he went to Somerton Beach. We do not know why most of the labels have been removed from his clothing. The practice was not unheard of, especially with second-hand garments, but the pattern remains strange. We do not know why the words Tamám Shud were cut from a book and hidden in a concealed pocket. We do not know what the letters inside that book mean, or whether they were ever a code at all. Most of all, we do not know why Jessica Thomson's phone number was written there. The genetic evidence also weakened a popular theory about Jessica. Researchers have suspected that the unknown man fathered her son Robin, partly because of reported similarities in their ears and teeth. But the Webb profile did not match Jessica's granddaughter Rachel Egan. Whatever connection Jessica had to the book, it was not the family relationship Manny had imagined. And then there is the death itself. The autopsy showed profound internal congestion and an enlarged spleen, but no poison was identified. If a cardiac glycoside killed him, did Webb take it willingly? Was it given to him? Or have 70 years of speculation turned uncertain pathology into a certainty that never existed? The official cause of death is still undetermined. DNA appears to have answered the first question asked on Somerton Beach. Who was he? It did not answer the question that followed. What happened to Carl Webb between Adelaide railway station and the seawall where his body was found? For decades, the Somerton Man was a phantom, a well-dressed body carrying two words that seemed to close a story nobody could read. Tamám Shud. It is finished. But the identification of Carl Webb did not finish the story. It only changed its shape. The mystery is now the missing path between a documented life in Melbourne and a silent death on an Adelaide beach. The book is gone. The letters remain unread. Whatever Jessica Thomson knew, or did not know, died with her, and the sand beneath the seawall offers no testimony. We found the man, but we did not find the truth. Subscribe if you're the kind of person who can't leave a question unanswered. Turn off the lights. The path ahead is dark, and the woods are deep. Do not walk them alone. Subscribe to stay in the light, or click the video on your screen to wander deeper into the shaded divide. We will be waiting.